Welcome back to your new community, friends. We're going to continue on through Matthew. We're nearing the end of the Olivet Discourse. This past Sunday, we were in Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 46. And I entitled the sermon, What Jesus Will Judge on That Final Day. And I began with the question, if you knew the pandemic was coming, how would you have prepared for it? How would you have prepared others for it? And the point of this was to convince the listener that the Christ returning and his judgment day, that last day, is even more certain, more of a certain future and inevitability than this pandemic. At least more of greater consequence, for sure. And we need to be prepared, not only ourselves, but we need to do our part, full of grace, gentleness, but clarity and urgency to help prepare others for this future as well. Now, a part of all this then is, and I think what Jesus wants to leave for you and me and his followers is wisdom on how to be prepared for that final day. And so my prayer for all of us during this, the preparation of the sermon and in delivering the sermon was, Lord, give me grace. Give all of us grace to follow you on your terms until you call us home. And I use that phrase on Christ's terms because he makes a clear requirement in today's passage. He draws a clear line between true followers of his who will be welcomed into his joy, into the new creation, and those who will be cast off into, using Jesus' words from today's passage, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. And so I did my best to point to three aspects of preparation, just wisdom in preparing well for this last day, this judgment day. And so I was asking, what wisdom should the Christ follower glean from Jesus' teaching about judgment day? And the first wisdom that I wanted to show you was the Christ follower's hope. Hope, just to refresh ourselves, defined in the dictionary as a feeling of expectation and desire for a particular thing to happen, or a person or thing that may help or save someone. And Christian hope, the object of our hope certainly is different from the world, but just that notion of hope is the same. An expectation and desire, and looking to Jesus ultimately to save us, to help us. So I'd like to invite you to study verses 31 to 33 and ask, what hope do these verses speak to for the Christ follower? On Sunday, I pointed out two aspects of Christian hope, and I'm confident you'll see those with me as you revisit these verses, but identify that and cross-reference Titus chapter 2, verses 11 to 14 to add to the discussion. Okay, so talk about the hope that Christ points us to. Another follow-up question on these verses, living for our own glory and exacting our own justice is certainly tempting while we're on this earth. Discuss together how we can live for Christ's glory and hope in Christ as judge as a better alternative than trying to live for our own glory and trying to exact our own brand of justice. Okay? And share practical examples of what that might look like in everyday life, what that has looked like for you. Next, I wanted us to see the Christ follower's confidence. There's a joyous confidence that the Christ follower is meant to have. So study verse 34, because I think that's where we see it. And I hope these two questions help you discuss and study verse 34. How does this verse speak to our sonship in Christ? what confidence can we draw from this verse about God the Father's love for his children? Okay? And then the third aspect of wisdom, piece of wisdom that I was attempting to show you on Sunday was the Christ follower's credibility. Study verses 35 to 46. Roughly, I think it's about actually more than half of this passage. And Jesus unpacks the scene before the judgment throne on Judgment Day. Jesus gives a concrete and clear fruit that true followers of Christ are to bear. So what is it? Identify that fruit, that conduct that we're to bear. That's, of course, to overflow from that confidence that we are Christ's child and having been loved by the Father and by his grace in Christ. So what is that fruit? Try to define it as clearly and explicitly and precisely, specifically as possible. Then, after you've identified it, how can we as a new community and as Trinity Grace Church at large be encouraged to live out Jesus's requirement? What does that look like for us? Okay? And then finally, look at verse 41 within this section. Jesus speaks very plainly. He doesn't mince words. He doesn't pull any punches. And he speaks of hell very specifically, even eternal fire. And this is the question. Hell is not an easy topic to broach in regular conversation. Nevertheless, we need to be prepared to share the whole counsel, the entire gospel of Christ, of Jesus the Christ. So share experiences, personal experiences and strategies that you've used about how to broach this difficult topic. And I hope you feel safe in God's grace, and that perhaps maybe you could even share conversations that didn't go well. Maybe there's something to learn from that. Maybe we could have approached it a different way, or perhaps even despite our most gracious, gentle, calm, loving efforts, it wasn't received well. And I think it's helpful to even hear of difficult experiences in broaching this difficult topic. Okay? So I hope that's helpful for you to have a substantial and meaningful and scintillating discussion. The passage certainly is just substantial and scintillating. And so God bless you. Be filled with the Spirit. Bye.